talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Tuesday morning edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. As you can see, I am back here in Las Vegas. Circa Casino is hosting me, and we got ourselves a busy show. Yes, I am out here for the Players Era Championship, the event that many people believe is killing the Maui Invitational. So we're going to talk about all that. Here is the rundown for the show, though. Listen, we're going to open college football. I know we're doing a lot of Lane Kiffin content, but the bottom line is this is the biggest story in sports. I cannot believe we have gotten to this point. Lane Kiffin says no questions on Monday about his future. He proceeds to get 3 questions and get very mad about it. So we'll discuss that. From there, Mark Stoops makes his argument on why he should be the Kentucky coach going forward. Some interesting comments from him and maybe an interesting piece of news revealed. Is it enough for him to keep the job? Then we'll wrap Arkansas maybe closing in on its own head coach, and we will talk, as mentioned, about the Players Era. I was there all day yesterday. I'll be going back today, and it's kind of the biggest topic in college sports right now, or the biggest topic in college basketball anyway. Is this tournament about to kill the Maui Invitational? Is it killing Feast Week? Is it bad for college basketball? Is it good for college basketball? I'm on the ground, and we talked to a lot of different people yesterday, and we will discuss all that. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. Make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We have surpassed 66,000 subscribers. I think we get to 67,000 before the end of the week. So make sure you're subscribed. You can also find the pod on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Before we also get started, I do want to thank our friends. I want to thank our hotel and casino partners. I want to thank the beautiful place that is hosting me right now, Circa Sportsbook and Circa Casino. Okay, so I am here at Circa Casino. They are hosting me all week long for the Players Era Championship. I'll be here until Thanksgiving Day, in which case I will be going to hang out with the fam. But bottom line is, when you're in Vegas, you need a place to watch games, hang out. Circa Sportsbook, there is nothing on planet Earth like it. I was down in the Sportsbook this morning. Probably go back down, do some of my post-show stuff down there this afternoon before I head over to the arena to watch the games. And listen, best place to watch games anywhere in Vegas. If you're in Vegas for Players Era, swing by here when your team's not playing. But also, here's the good news. Maybe you can't make it out to Vegas. Maybe it's too expensive. Well, guess what? Circa has opened up a brand new sports book at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. All of the same great hospitality that you get out here in Las Vegas. Beautiful views, beautiful scenery, but also a great place to watch all the big games. Listen, bottom line is, we know what this world that we're living in is like. You got to pay for a million different apps. You got to download this. You got to do that. No. All you got to do, if you are in Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, Indiana, any of those surrounding areas, check out the new Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. It's right on that Kentucky-Tennessee border, about 35, 40 minutes from Nashville. Check out Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. And we really do appreciate Circa's support hosting us here for the Aaron Torres Pod. With that said, it is a busy Tuesday in sports. There is no more time, no way. So let's get to the topic of the day. Listen, I'll be honest. I'm kind of over talking Lane Kiffin, okay? But at the same time, this is the biggest story in college sports right now. You know, I think it is shaping up to be, if this goes the way I think we will, one of the bigger stories we have had in any amount of time. The bottom line is, you know, it is just so unprecedented, so uneven thought of the possibility that a coach that has a team that legitimately can make a deep run into the playoff, deciding to leave for another school. And so we've talked about it time and time again. And I'll be honest, before we get to what happened on Monday, listen, I'm not trying to brag. I do want to give us a little credit, though. Bottom line is, I was saying it 2 weeks ago. I was saying, man, am I the only one noticing how weird it's starting to get at Ole Miss? And at the time, every Ole Miss fan was saying, no, he waits until the end of the year. He'll make a decision on his timeline. It's fine. And I said, okay, cool. But 3 Mondays ago now, so not yesterday, 2 weeks ago, going into the Florida game. Now, admittedly, they were playing Florida, but at the same time, I watched the press conference and I said, guys, this is getting weird. If you remember, that was the game. That was the day that he was specifically asked, and I'm paraphrasing. We didn't pull this video from 3 weeks ago, but he was basically asked, hey, do you think the Florida job's a better job than Ole Miss? And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that was the gist of what the question was. Not what do you deem to be a good job? Not is Ole Miss a blue blood? Can you turn it into one? It was, does Florida offer you things as a head coach that Ole Miss cannot? Lane Kiffin danced around it. And I said, listen, until he makes a definitive statement, he is going to keep getting asked about this. And unfortunately, we saw this in spades on Monday. Okay, so Monday afternoon, and I've told you this was coming. Remember, last week, Ole Miss was on a bye week. I said something has to happen by Friday. He cannot go to his Monday Egg Bowl press conference without addressing this. Because if he does not, then guess what? The whole conversation, everything is going to be about his future and not about the game. And so why do I bring it up? It was because on Monday, he went to the press conference. Everything was about his future and nothing about the game. And Lane Kiffin, listen, this part is not his fault. This part is not the media relations people's fault. But the media relations people at Ole Miss were just, they basically said to the media there, like, hey, no questions about anything other than the Egg Bowl today, okay? Well, listen, media members have a job to do. And so media members asked, I'm going to quote LeBron James here, not one, not two, 3 different questions to Lane Kiffin about his future. You can blame the media for asking tough questions. You can blame, here's the bottom line. This is a man that has a team good enough to make a deep playoff run, and he refuses to commit to his team's future. So I bring it up because on Monday, I want to play the sound. Again, Ole Miss media relations says no questions other than the game. Lane Kiffin goes to the podium. Here is some video. I don't know if he pulled it himself, but Matt Moscana, who covers LSU, posted the 3 questions back to back. Lane Kiffin says no questions about anything other than the Egg Bowl. Here was the media's response in Oxford.
Lane, Keith released a statement on Friday saying that you, him, and Chancellor Boyce had a meeting about your future. Are you able to elaborate on the nature of that meeting at all?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, very fair question, but we're not answering anything that doesn't have to do with the game and the team and the season. But fair question.
You mentioned on Pat McAfee how you don't make decisions based on money. When you do make your decisions, what are the considerations for you then, especially when it comes to football decisions, right? Like, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, very fair question, but I'm not going into it because, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to keep this to this team. And
He says expects a decision on Saturday. Is that a decision that's been made, or is that still in consideration? Like, people are just curious about that.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can just keep going. I'm not going to answer them, so that's 3 of them. You got another one?
So that was Lane Kiffin saying before the press conference, only questions about the Egg Bowl. Got 3 different questions about his future. So listen, this is bad. I think it's very interesting. There were a lot of body language doctors on social media reacting to this on Monday. Listen, I'll just say this. Every day I have a different opinion on where Lane Kiffin is going to end up. Every day it feels like even maybe Lane Kiffin is going to – I think Lane Kiffin sometimes has different opinions on this. So this is not I think he's going to Florida. I think he's going – that's not what this is about. What this is about is a situation that was perfectly avoidable that now is a total crap show, and I promise you behind the scenes it's even crazier than you think. Okay, so first of all, let's do a little myth busting right now. Okay, by the way, for people who are just joining us, I am live, Circa Casino, Las Vegas, beautiful spot. I appreciate them hosting me. They're a great partner of ours. So let's do some myth busting on this Lane Kiffin situation, okay? Because first of all, when I reposted that video on Monday, I saw a lot of people say, well, it's only a media circus because you guys created it. I know. Listen, I respect anybody. I respect 99% of people in the media, okay? I certainly respect beat writers that have to show up every single day on any beat. Could be Auburn when Hugh Freeze was there. Could be LSU when Brian Kelly was there. Could be UConn. I was at the St. John's press conference yesterday, and Rick Pitino was screaming at guys. I respect anybody who shows up and asks tough questions, and it is not the media's responsibility to cover for a coach, protect a coach, or not ask the questions that people want answered, okay? Now, the coach doesn't have to answer it, and I don't blame Lane Kiffin for saying no comment, no comment, no comment, but don't blame the media. 2, on top of that, let me also say this. People say, what do you want him to do? Da-da-da-da, this and that. You guys keep asking him. There's no update. Well, here's a crazy thing he could do. He could simply say, I'm coming back to Ole Miss. Because to me, again, I don't fully blame Lane Kiffin for everything that has gone on. As we've discussed for weeks now, historically, he has always said, I wait until the end of the year before I make any final decisions. You can't do it this year because your season literally might not end for close to 2 months from now if you coach throughout. And so that was never in play. And so once that happens, you have to answer questions. And I think you just totally have to be transparent. You know, people can sit there and say he's allowed to do whatever he wants. I get it. You also can't be mad at people for asking. And there is one very simple way to stop getting these questions. Go ahead and say, I'm returning to Ole Miss. And until you do, and if you don't before the Egg Bowl, you're going to get asked about it. They could win the Egg Bowl by 50. They could lose the Egg Bowl by 50. It's the only thing anyone's going to ask after the game. And so I just bring it up because there's a very easy solution to end all this madness. And that is to say, I'm coming back to Ole Miss. And I'm not here to say whether it's right or wrong that he wants to leave. But I do think, listen, what's the old saying? To whom much is given, much is expected. Listen, you got a lot of great opportunities in front of you. But if you don't want these questions, commit to coming back. And increasingly, I still think it's sort of crazy that he's seriously considering leaving when he has a team good enough to make a deep college football playoff run. The one thing I will say, though, don't blame the media. And here's the other thing. Lane Kiffin is not a victim here because, again, like I said, I saw a lot of people. It's you guys in the media. It's your guys' fault. Why do you? It's our job to ask questions. And, oh, by the way, stop telling us that Lane Kiffin is a victim. He's a coach that's going to make $13 million a year somewhere. He has great choices, but he has also handled this poorly. And worse than handling it poorly in the lead up to yesterday, I thought the excuse making and, the victim mentality that he brought to that press conference was low-key sort of embarrassing. Okay, so for people who didn't see this, there was another video clip. I didn't have Matt pull it. That's on me. But he went to the podium and basically said, look, this isn't a big deal because all these players, it's a new world. And these players, they can leave whenever they want. And so they don't even care what the coach is doing. Matt, you can pop up the tweet now. This was the exact quote. Trey Wallace shared it. Lane Kiffin said, quote, it's a different generation, guys. They can leave every year. A lot of that is financial based. They don't think the traditional way like years ago about their coach. What's he going to do next year? I can tell you this. I am sure for some of Ole Miss players, it's true. They either know they're entering the portal, they know they're following Lane Kiffin, they know even if Lane Kiffin leaves, they're staying, okay? I can definitively tell you, and I tweeted this out, that's not how everyone in that locker room feels. Because Lane Kiffin's trying to make this out to be, hey, this is just how college sports is. These guys don't care. They're here to finish the season, whatever, blah, 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 blah. What I can definitively tell you, that is simply not true, okay? So I tweeted it out, quoting the quote from Lane Kiffin, and I just said, I can tell you, and this is fact, unequivocally, from 100% sourced firsthand knowledge, Lane Kiffin is not speaking for all of his players when he says it's a different generation, they don't care what their coach is doing. There are a lot of guys in that locker room, this is my tweet again, who are not happy to be part of the Lane Kiffin circus, nor do I blame them. That was a good tweet. I'm going to retweet it right now. Here's the bottom line. Lane Kiffin can say all this stuff. And there are probably guys in that locker room that are like, yeah, whatever. He's bouncing. And guess what? I was bouncing anyway. I wasn't staying at Ole Miss beyond next year, whether it was Lane Kiffin or Chris Kiffin being there. There are a lot of guys, though, that are very upset about this. And it's funny because, the more I talk about this, you get people in the comments, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's an idiot. Listen, I never say anything I don't believe, but what I can definitively tell you, what I am 100% certain on is this. I have talked to people around the Ole Miss community. A lot of them have reached out to me over the past probably 10 days or so. What I can tell you is there are a lot of people mad. And as I said on Sunday's show, I said this on Sunday's show, and people said I'm making it up or you don't know what you're talking about or whatever. I know for certain there are players that are really mad about that situation. And as I said on Sunday's show, if Lane Kiffin is coming back, and I think increasingly if you listen to that audio, he's not. But I was told that people in that whole building are pissed because it comes back down to the John Summerall video that I keep playing. John Summerall, the Tulane head coach, who might be the next Ole Miss head coach, he joined this pod about a month ago. And I asked him, how do you handle job circumstances? And he said, look, I tell my players, no distractions. Once the season starts, no distractions. No distractions from me, no distractions from you. You're going to hear outside noise. When we win, they're going to name me for a bunch of other jobs. And when we lose, they're going to say I need to be fired and get out of here. But I will not be a distraction. And oh, by the way, you guys better not be a distraction either. No agents calling, no nothing. And that is the frustration in that building with a lot of Ole Miss. But I can't speak for every player. I know Kawan Lacey was buddy-buddy with him during Pat McAfee's interview, okay? But at the same time, I can tell you there are people in that building that are like, dude, you've been telling us since we all got together in February of last year, let alone August of this past, summer camp. No distractions. Start where you finish. And now with 2 weeks left in the season, you are the distraction. And so I don't want to hear it. I feel zero sympathy for Lane Kiffin. And again, it's very easy for him to end all of these questions that are annoying him. Say you're going to stay at Ole Miss. The fact that he won't, the fact that there's another, we'll have the conversation of Lane Kiffin to Florida or Lane Kiffin to LSU if and when it happens on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whenever it is. But at the same time, what I will tell you is, I do think that this kind of, if he decides to come back, or I'll take it a step further, if he knows imagine if he knew he was coming back, it would be crazy to me for him to know that he's coming back and refuse to answer questions at the podium the way that he has. So we'll see what happens. I feel bad for Ole Miss fans. I want to put a silver lining on this for Ole Miss fans because they've brought it up, and I believe they're 100% correct. Is to Lane Kiffin's credit, but to the credit of the administration, of the boosters, of the collective, Walker Jones, the collective guy, this is now a much more desirable job than it was 3-4 years ago. So if Lane Kiffin moves on, Ole Miss is going to be fine. But this is, like I said, it's a fiasco. It's a zoo. Don't tell me the players do not care because they do. Maybe not all 85, but enough of them do. This is a fiasco. It's a disaster, and it's 100% self-inflicted by one man, Lane Kiffin. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break, come back, answer some of your questions. When we come back, speaking of interesting quotes from SEC head coaches on Monday, Mark Stoops, he's fighting for his job, and he's telling you why he believes that he should be the head coach at Kentucky next year. Threw in an interesting little caveat with it, mind you, as well. Also, Arkansas, we talked about them on Sunday's show. They might be coming to a decision on their head coach as well. We'll talk about that. The players era, why I'm in Vegas. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Good to be back. For those of you just joining us, we are live. Stadium Swim, Circa Sportsbook, Circa Casino in Las Vegas. So grateful to the entire crew here for having us. We are very grateful for everything that Circa does for us. Matt, really quick, any interesting Kiffin commentary before we switch gears to an interesting day of quotes from Mark Stoops as well? Ooh, a new setup here. Luke says, if Ole Miss loses the Egg Bowl, their fans will want him gone. They would lose out on a home playoff game and possibly the playoff entirely. This to me, so when the Keith Carter, by the way, 2 late season swoons caused by Lane flirting with other programs. Yeah, don't forget, he also basically cost Alabama a national championship when he got fired 2 days before the national championship game. That was the year that they lost to Clemson in the title game with Deshaun Watson. So real quick, go back to the first one, Matt, again. So to the part about Ole Miss loses the Egg Bowl, their fans will want him gone. They would lose out on a home playoff game. Two quick things come to mind with that. One, remember, we ran the John Talty article last week. We talked about the quote where the booster promised to give $500,000 if Lane Kiffin returned, and then he messed around and lost the Egg Bowl, and the booster said, I'll pay him $500,000 to go away. It ain't going to be any different this time around. And I will tell you this. So when Keith Carter, the AD, released that statement last week, I thought it meant one of two things. I thought it meant, one, Lane was truly undecided, but two, I also think that if Lane had decided, Keith Carter was like, we have to at least give off the air that you're coming back because we can't have this team going into the tank for the Egg Bowl. The thing that Luke brings up, I don't think people realize, if Ole Miss loses this game, I think there's a real possibility that they miss the college football playoff. Now, they have the head-to-head win over Oklahoma, which is trending to be a 2-loss team as well. I get that. But the committee is supposed to factor in variables such as injuries like they did with Jordan Travis or outside things that impact your team. And so if you have this glut of 2-loss teams and all of a sudden the head coach is gone and, listen, Oregon's getting in at 11-1, Indiana, Ohio State, the losers getting in. I keep going back to everyone's focused on Notre Dame versus Miami. If you put Miami in, we're getting 2 ACC teams because Miami is not playing for the ACC championship. I think Ole Miss's playoff situation is much more tenuous than people realize. They need to win this game. And I think either way, it's just ugly, and it didn't have to be this way, but it is what it is with Lane Kiffin. All right, one more, we'll get to it. 2022 when he flirted with Auburn. Yeah, that was when it all fell apart in the end, and we'll see what happens in Starkville on Friday at 11 Central, 12 Eastern. The weakest link says Kiffin is only doing this again in a few years when Bama. Listen, my last thought on Kiffin for the day, he's allowed to do what he wants, and he's allowed to do what he thinks is best. But to the weakest link's point, don't ever tell us again that you're changed. You're the same dude that left Tennessee in the cloak of darkness. You're the same guy that was so distracted, as I said a second ago, that you left Alabama. You didn't leave Alabama. You were fired from Alabama because you couldn't focus on trying to win a national championship. He's allowed to do what he wants. If he wants to be at Florida, if he wants to be at LSU, he's allowed to be wherever he wants. But don't ever give us this crap again. If I'm changed and I do hot yoga and I don't drink anymore and I'm a different person, not acting like it. You're not acting like it. Tell you what, let's get to the rest of the show. Commonwealth Cup in Louisville on Saturday. By the way, if you're thinking about going, if you live in Louisville, if you live in Lexington, and you need last-minute tickets, check out our friends and our ticketing partners, SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. So SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app. Over 28 million, like Dr. Evil, 28 million downloads. Best part about SeatGeek, this is what I love about SeatGeek. Couple things. One, rate every ticket, 1 through 10, green dot, red dot. Green means you better go ahead and purchase that bad boy. Red dot means stay away. But you know what I really love about SeatGeek? They take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. That's right. If you use promo code Torres, that's promo code TORRES, you get $20 off your first purchase. So any ticket, any concert, any show, maybe you're a Florida fan and you're ready to buy tickets to football for the first time in a long time, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek app, promo code Torres, gets you $20 off your first purchase. If you want to go to any football game this weekend, college basketball, NFL, concert, show, comedy, whatever, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. Let's go ahead and switch gears. All right, so Lane Kiffin, is he staying? Is he going? There is another pseudo is he staying, is he going situation in the SEC, and that is Mark Stoops, and that is the University of Kentucky. Okay, so University of Kentucky, it has certainly been a whirlwind couple weeks for the Kentucky football job, okay? So Mark Stoops, listen, I don't know if he necessarily, quote-unquote, came into the season on the hot seat. Now, I thought it was a little more perilous than most, but he coached himself on the hot seat because 1 year after going 1-7 in the SEC, started out what? 0-5 in the SEC? Started out what? 2-5 overall? And it felt like, man, oh man, this dude, he's going to be gone. You know, we talked about it a few weeks ago. There were reports that he was considering being willing to renegotiate his buyout. There was consideration of whatever. And so I bring it up because we thought Mark Stoops was done. It was just a question of how. Then the little sucker went on a little winning streak, didn't he? So Mark Stoops, 3-game winning streak going into last weekend. The stunner at Kentucky, or the stunner at Auburn, that cost Hugh Freeze his job. Then you just beat down Florida at home. It was the first win at Kroger Field for Kentucky in the SEC in over 2 calendar years. And then you laid the whooping to Tennessee Tech. And so all felt good with Mark Stoops. Felt like he was going to get back for another year, but there was this little thing of, yeah, you probably should win one of your final 2 games just to be safe. And at Vandy, at Louisville, you can do it, Mark Stoops. You just beat Florida. You just beat Auburn. Well, the bad news for Mark Stoops, it was not pretty when they went to Vandy last week. You know, I thought Diego Pavia, a heck of a statement in the Heisman Trophy race. 45-17 was the final score in that game. And I only bring it up because, like I said, Diego Pavia, 5 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, and the Vanderbilt Commodores take care of Kentucky. And so now you're 5-6. You are looking at potentially missing a bowl game for the 2nd straight year after making 8 straight. And it feels like Mark Stoops' job is back in peril. Well, I bring it up because there was one man that was asked about Mark Stoops' future on Monday, and that was Mark Stoops. He was asked about why he believes, I don't know the exact question that he was asked, but basically here was his response to the situation. Quote, "Whether you like it or not, I'm a Kentuckian. I've been here as long as I've been anywhere. I left home at 17 and haven't been back. This is home." So Mark Stoops being asked about, does he want to stay? Should he stay? Whatever. Says, quote, "I'm a Kentuckian. I've been here as long as I've been anywhere. I left home at 17. I've been here now 14 years. This is home to me." And so I thought that was an interesting quote. But I thought what was maybe even more interesting was later in the evening when he did his coach's call-in show. He dropped a little, Mark Stoops is a little woj. He was dropping nuggets left and right in the phone call, in the call-in show, was talking about his future. And he referenced that Cutter Boley, his quarterback, has not has announced publicly, but has told him privately that he is going to be back for another year. And so I bring this up because, to me, I don't think these 2 news items are unrelated. In other words, I think Mark Stoops very strategically went to the podium on Monday, made his case for why he believes he should remain the Kentucky head coach. And then, little carrot at the end of the string, says, oh, by the way, my quarterback is coming back too. You guys should bring me back. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about if it's even realistic that Mark Stoops is gone. And listen, it does start with what I said a minute ago, is that I think when Kentucky went on that 3-game winning streak, I think there was a thought, okay, when one of the next two, you're 6-6, you started 2-5, not great at math. That means you finished 4-1 down the stretch, though. And you absolutely, you're 14, you deserve another year. Like you just do at that point, okay? You salvaged the season, you got the quarterback, all that good stuff. The Vandy loss and the manner in which it happened certainly did raise some eyebrows, though, because it was all the things that you hate about Kentucky football if you're a Kentucky fan. Beat up by a program that you used to own. I think that's the frustrating part. Forget all the Diego Pavia this, whatever. It's that, Kentucky's sitting there saying, why is Vandy on the verge of a 10-win season, but we're not? If Vandy can be a 10-win program, there's no reason we can't be. Now, I think everyone understands it's probably not an annual realistic goal at Kentucky. I don't think it is at Vandy either. I don't think it is at a lot of places. Just was talking to a South Carolina fan 10 minutes ago. He's like, yeah, I thought we were going to be awesome this year. Look what happened to us. So I understand it's not realistic, but to lose to Vandy in the manner you did, it shows the gap, how big that gap has widened. And so now there's a lot of questions as to whether or not, if Kentucky were to lose to Louisville, Mark Stoops, not Mark Pope, Mark Stoops should be back. Okay. So let me give my thoughts, and I will preface it by saying what I always say on this show. I never tell a fan how to feel. I know Mark Stoops is a very polarizing topic in the state of Kentucky right now. And if you're just over him, if you don't want him, if you don't think he should be back, I'm not here to try to convince you otherwise. What I will tell you, though, I think he's coming back. And I think probably it's the right thing. A couple reasons. It's the obvious ones. First of all, he does have that massive buyout. Kentucky fans, you know the number. I think, $39 million, all owed within 60 days. And I will say, it was funny. We went off air on Sunday right after the Florida State news dropped that Mike Norvell was coming back. And I bring it up because I think a lot of people were surprised. But the counter is I do think we live in this world where we all just believe that all these schools operate with monopoly money and it's not real. And, James Franklin gets this and Brian Kelly. No. The difference between those buyouts and Mark Stoops is much different. First of all, Brian Kelly's buyout is clearly still pretty bad because LSU is trying to mitigate it in court. They're trying to fight it so they don't have to pay. James Franklin, yes, it was $50 million on paper, but as we found out, Penn State's going to pay him about $9 million to go away and start over. Mark Stoops is owed his entirety of his salary within 60 days. That is insane, and that's a huge check to write. And is that a check that you want to write when there's a little bit of momentum in the program? So there's that part of it. There's the part about all of these other jobs are open right now. Arkansas, we're going to talk about in a minute. 3 months head start on this coaching search. Auburn, a month head start. Ole Miss potentially could be open in a day or two. Florida or LSU, even if the other one gets Ole Miss, is going to be hiring a coach. Do you want to be that far down the pecking order and waiting until the last weekend in November to make a final decision? I don't think you do. Most importantly, though, you know what the X factor is to me? It's that Cutter Boley, I think, is really good. Now, listen, I would assume mostly Kentucky fans will be watching this segment, so shout out to you guys for tuning in, and we appreciate your support. If you're not a Kentucky fan, you're probably sitting there saying, who's Cutter Boley? Why is 15 touchdowns, 10 interceptions? Is he really that good? He's that good. And that's the thing. Now, I will say this. If I was Mitch Barnhart, we'll get to Mitch Barnhart in a second. If I was Mitch Barnhart, I'd be damn sure that what Mark Stoops said about Cutter Boley is true. In other words, is Mark Stoops saying this publicly to protect himself? But if Cutter Boley's coming back, listen, the toughest part of being a football coach at any level is finding the right quarterback. I mean, listen, the reason Bobby Petrino is not going to be the head coach at Arkansas is because he bet on the wrong quarterback. Trying to think. Hugh Freeze. I don't want to say, I think the reason Hugh Freeze isn't coaching is because he's a terrible play caller, or at least he was in the final iteration at Auburn. But he clearly was not playing the best quarterback, and it cost him his job. And so with Mark Stoops, he found the quarterback. That's the hard part. And that was another interesting thing that Mark Stoops said on Monday night, was that our job now is to go out and build a team around him through the portal and JUCOs and high school and this and that. And so you have the quarterback. The buyout is insane. The situation with other head coaches will never be crazier. I think you hold on to him, and the final variable is I just don't know if Mitch Barnhart's going to do it. And by the way, we'll get to some of your questions, your comments in a second. But Mitch Barnhart, the AD, the assumption is he's going to retire at the end of the year. 66 years old. I didn't realize quite how long he had been there for. I knew he had been there a while. I forgot that not only has he been there so long, he hired John Calipari. He also hired Billy Gillispie before him. Mitch Barnhart was there when Tubby Smith was the head coach of Kentucky basketball. So I just bring it up because that guy's on the way out. You think he's really going to fire a head coach? Even if he goes 5-7, pay him $39 million on his way out the door? I just don't see it. And so we'll see what happens. I actually, Matt, if we have any questions from Kentucky fans, I'd love to get to them or comments because I don't know where Kentucky fans stand on this. But I think this is Mark Stoops kind of going to the podium and saying, I think I'm going to be the head coach. Let's start focusing on 2026 with Cutter Bowling. So Luke says, word from Matt Jones is Mitch Barnhart is retiring this summer. In that case, it's even more unlikely that he'll fire Stoops. He'll let the next AD choose their guy. And to me, that's the X factor. Is I don't think an outgoing AD is going to fire one of his best friends, fire the guy he brought in. I mean, for Kentucky fans watching, they hugged on the field at Auburn when they won. You could see them embrace. You could see how much it meant to both of them to get that win, which was obviously their first SEC win as a program in over a calendar year. So Luke brings up the most important point. I think that probably realistically the AD will not be there a year from now. And that's that's a future AD problem, right? Mitch Barnhart can retire and say, hey, somebody else wants to pay that $39 million. They can figure it out. Obviously, it won't be a $39 million buyout at that point. But somebody else can figure it out. Not my problem. Not going to worry about it, whatever. So we'll see what happens there. I'll say this. If Mitch Barnhart is going to retire, I think he's probably got to announce it pretty soon. I know, obviously, there are a couple internal candidates. Dwayne Peavy at DePaul would be a logical replacement as well. But you still need time to transition, and I don't know that you can just make the announcement on July 1st at the beginning of the fiscal year. So we'll see what happens. I kind of believe Mark Stoops will be the head coach, and I think it's pretty official, and I think he's talking like he's going to be the next head coach or the head coach of Kentucky next year. Matt, anything else on Mark Stoops before we get to Arkansas? Darren says, Kentucky will never be anything but a doormat for the SEC under Stoops, but of course keep him for more years of heartbreak for our fan base. I think it's totally fair. And I think that's why the loss to Vandy was so devastating, was because there's no reason Vandy should be that much better than you. Now, by the way, to be fair to Mark Stoops, maybe it's just a Diego Pavia thing, because until Diego Pavia got there last year, Vandy wasn't exactly running all over Kentucky the way that they did last weekend. But I do think that's part of it, is you can't be losing to Vandy in the manner that you did. By the way, the loss to South Carolina has aged insanely poorly. Now, to be fair, you also should have been in Texas. You did beat Florida for what, a third time in a row at home. So there are some positives, but I do think, and that's why I'll say this real quick, and then we'll move on to Arkansas because there's some news there. This is why it's hard for me to be mad at Kentucky fans, because I think even if you bring him back, the ceiling is probably 6-6, 7-5, especially, by the way, with the extra SEC game coming in. True. UK is the doormat and we get chastised for complaining. Take your loser spot and enjoy. I don't know if that's sarcasm to me, but that's my exact point. That's the argument about not bringing back Mark Stoops, is that the ceiling is 6-6, 7-5, and I don't think any program should have to settle for that if you have the right coach. And I think the other thing is, the candidates that you want, specifically Will Stein, who is from the state of Kentucky, will he be available a year from now? All right, let's go ahead and switch gears, Matt. Let's talk a little bit about a job that is open and a job that may be closing soon, and that is the situation with the Arkansas Razorbacks. Okay, so Arkansas was the first job to open up in the SEC, Week 5. We all remember the Notre Dame game. Stadium emptied out at the half. And, man, it was ugly that last day for Sam Pittman. A lot of close losses. You barely lose to Memphis. You barely lose to Ole Miss to open SEC play. So, funny, all these things are coming back to Ole Miss. But anyway, barely lose to Ole Miss. Then the doors get blown off against Notre Dame, and Sam Pittman's gone. And so I bring it up because there has obviously been some evolution in the coaching search. By the way, for people just joining us, I am here at Stadium Swim Circa Casino in Las Vegas. I'm here for the Players Era Tournament. I will be going to games this afternoon. And by the way, in about 10 minutes from now, I'll be discussing Players Era because it is certainly the hot topic in all of sports right now. But let's get back to the Arkansas search because we did get some news over the weekend. Pete Thamel, I missed this live. I guess it was during the actual game against Texas where Pete Thamel basically said, hey, this is down to 4 candidates. It's down to Memphis coach Ryan Silverfield, USF coach Alex Golish, Eric Morris, the head coach at North Texas, and Kane Womack, the defensive coordinator at Alabama. And so I bring it up because we talked about this on Sunday's show, and we talked about all the different reports. You know, there was a kind of an interesting report that on Matt Campbell, somehow Matt Campbell's name got linked to Arkansas. Who knows what's true? Who knows what's not? But it feels like it's going to be one of those 4, okay? And so I bring it up because we talked all about it. The one guy we really didn't talk about much was Kane Womack, though. But I can tell you, and I'm going to get into some details in a minute, Kane Womack's name, at least for a little while, especially on Sunday after I finished the show, seemed to pick up steam. And it's not just me that's saying it. I saw this clip. Somebody sent it to me, and I think it's worth playing here. So Dave Bazell, former player at Arkansas. He is also in the media now. I do not know him personally. I feel like I know every Arkansas media member except for him. But my understanding is he's a pretty big deal down there in Arkansas, okay? Well, I bring it up because he was on the Hogs Central podcast talking about coaching candidates, mentioned the 4 names. Again, Alex Golish, USF, Ryan Silverfield, Memphis, Eric Morris, North Texas, Kane Womack, Alabama defensive coordinator. And here is what Dave Bazell had to say about the situation.
Has any name in his back pocket here that's going to just shock us?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Out of those 4, who do you like? You like Womack?
Yeah, but just because he's got a connection to Arkansas. His dad was a coach when I was there, GA at the time. He played for 2 years at Houston, sort of gets it. He's coached in the SEC, been a head coach at South Alabama, been around the block long enough, and has a good reputation. He's good enough to where he's the defensive coordinator at Alabama right now. So, but you know, I'll tell you, it'd be between him and Morris at North Texas.
Morris left to overcome his name.
Yeah, I know.
I do like that he's the quarterback whisperer.
Yeah, I like that. I do too. And he's done a good job. He's still sort of green. Both these guys are young.
Yeah,
they're really young. But you have to sort of, you know, somebody who's got a little feel about the state of it. He played. You know,
right.
Kane Womack was a player at Arkansas. That gives him, to me,
that's something I think fans want.
I think a tremendous advantage. He went to school at Fayetteville High School. You know, I found out today that Molly Harrell, the granddaughter of Coach Broyles, went to school with him. So I was unaware of that, and I knew his dad. And so, not that that's the end all, but I think those are valuable things.
So that was Dave Bazell on the Hog Central podcast. You know, again, I don't know Dave. I do know that he carries a lot of weight in the state of Arkansas, and I do know that when he speaks, people listen. And so let's go ahead and dive in. So like I said, so first of all, let me say this. After we got off air on Sunday, I started making some phone calls. And part of the reason why I was curious was because, remember, the reporting has been that Arkansas wants to name a head coach soon, like before the end of this week. And so it kind of hit me. I'm like, if they want to hire somebody this week, it can't be Alex Golish. He's got a game to coach. Can't be Ryan Silverfield. He's got a game to coach. Can't be Eric Morris. He's got at least one, maybe more than one game to coach at this point. So I said, is this going to be Kane Womack? So I texted 2 people I trust in the state of Alabama that know the Alabama program. Remember, Kane Womack is the defensive coordinator at Alabama. I said, hey, you hearing this? And one said definitively, yeah, I actually am hearing that is the guy that Arkansas is prioritizing. Now, I will say, to be fair, my other Alabama guy said, I think it's a lot of smoke. I don't actually think he's leaving. Let's talk about Kane Womack, the pluses and minuses, and I'll be transparent. So my personal belief is if I was Arkansas and I was doing the hiring and I had a choice between those 4 guys, I do like Eric Morris, the head coach at North Texas, and we mentioned it the other day. I'll just be transparent. One, I think it's an offensive world. I think, you need to be great on offense. I also think it's a tough sell it's not a tough sell because, if you win games 20-6 and you're awesome, that's all that matters. Winning is all that matters. But I do think scoring 45 points and being fun to watch and putting the ball in the end zone is a lot of fun. And so I believe in Eric Morris. He does have, he's a very successful head coach. As they said on that podcast, that he is the quarterback whisperer. Every quarterback he works with turns to gold. Cam Ward was a 0-star recruit at Incarnate Word till he started playing for Eric Morris, and then he was the number 1 pick in the draft 3 or 4 years later. So you go on and on. I love Eric Morris. The other thing, too, with Eric Morris, he doesn't have great NIL at North Texas. And so to me, that matters because, we've heard this complaint about Arkansas from Hunter Yurachek. We are not funded right now to the level that we need to be. Now, maybe by the time this hire gets made, they will be. But you want a guy that's already doing more with less. I would go ahead and hire Eric Morris. Now, the issue with Eric Morris, it's almost like a Lane Kiffin light type thing where he's going to be in the American Championship with a win this weekend. And if he wins this weekend, then guess what? Can you wait another 3 weeks to name your head coach? If you're Arkansas, I don't think that you can. So I just bring it up because I am an Eric Morris guy. Let's talk about Kane Womack, though, because like I said, a lot of people I trust were saying, there's starting to be a little bit of smoke. I think there are things that I like and things that I don't. So transparently, what do I like? I said it the other day. I want a younger guy. I know everybody wants the guy with a bunch of experience that's been there and seen it all and done it all. I just think in this NIL world, you have to be flexible. You can't be rigid. You can't be stuck in your ways. This thing is changing. College sports as we know it. We're going to talk about the Players Era Championship in 10 minutes. It's a new event that didn't exist 2 years ago. Now it might kill the Maui Invitational, okay? So college sports is changing so fast that you have to be able to change with it. And I just think a 37-year-old or a 41-year-old or a 38-year-old is going to adjust better than a 61-year-old. I think that's why a lot of these older coaches have gotten out. They just said, I've been doing it one way the entire time. I don't want to try to learn it another way. So I like the young part. As far as Womack's concerned, I don't like the defensive coordinator part. And I guess what I would say is this. I know he played at Arkansas, went to Fayetteville High. I don't know. So let me even backtrack, okay? So I think in theory, it's good that it's a guy that we believe, based on what Dave Brazell said, really wants the job. Here's where the issue comes in for me, though. You know who else very publicly said they want the job, and it was maybe the only selling point to hiring him? Sam Pittman. Do we not remember how Sam Pittman got the job? Went through this long hiring process. Nobody wants it. Lane Kiffin was involved at Arkansas for half a second. Everybody forgets about that. By the way, Arkansas fans, I'm sure it would have been worth all the wins. You would have had a lot of freaking anxiety watching this Lane Kiffin thing unfold. Anyway, we're not talking about Lane Kiffin here. But that's how Sam Pittman got the job, was that, a bunch of dudes turned it down. And what was Sam Pittman's selling point? Well, he wants to be here. He loves Arkansas. He loves the school. And I think at the time it was probably the right hire. Spent a bunch of money on the coordinators, Barry Odom, Kendall Briles at the time, and it worked out. Won 9 games in year 2. Fell apart pretty quickly, though. And so if the number one, what's the right word? Not priority, but the number one bullet point on a resume is wants to be there, I need to see something more. Now, the good thing is Kane Womack, listen, he knows what he's doing. Coached at South Alabama before he got to Alabama, before he went to Alabama as the DC, I should say. Did win 10 games in year 2. So he has had coaching experience. We don't know enough about his recruiting. I mean, Alabama is recruiting well. Is that because of Kane Womack, or is that because they're Alabama? We don't know that part. But I guess all I would say is, if that ends up being the hire, listen, he could have done worse. You could have gotten somebody, whatever. But one, I don't love the defensive hire in this offensive world that we're in. I do like that he's a little bit younger. I like that he wants to be there because, listen, nobody wants to hire somebody that doesn't want to be there. But I just don't know if that can be the number one selling point. And so we'll see what happens. Other than that, really no super strong opinions on Kane Womack. I'd be open to the discussion. But the counter to that is I do think I'd probably, at minimum, wait to see if Eric Morris becomes available after this weekend, if he becomes available after next weekend. And we'll see what happens from there. Yeah, just with Kane Womack, it is what it is. I don't love the hire, but I guess I could be talked into it. The one thing I will say, Alabama, it's funny, I was at the Alabama-Gonzaga basketball game on Monday night. Greg Byrne, the athletic director, was there. I think, Kane Womack has seen up close and in person what a high-level operation from the top down should look like in college athletics. And so I do think that he would have a good idea of how to put the right front office in place, the right player personnel people in place. And then on top of it, also, build a program from the ground up. Obviously, you would be starting from a different point than Kalen DeBoer, his current boss. So we'll see what happens. If Arkansas wants to make a hire this week, he's the only one that really makes sense. By the way, I should mention, I didn't even mention this, Kane Womack was asked about it and basically said, my only job right now is the University of Alabama, was pretty non-committal on that. So we'll see what happens there. By the way, for people just joining us, we are at Circa Sportsbook in Vegas. And I'll tell you what, when we come back, we'll talk about the reason I'm in Vegas. So the Players Era Tournament. This is the college basketball tournament that pays teams $1 million to participate. We're going to talk about, is this tournament actually killing the Maui Invitational and Feast Week as we know it? I'm a little dubious. I'll explain next. And I'm on the ground, so I feel like I have pretty good perspective on this. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Collie Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Collie Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Collie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to ColliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, ColliePuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase, one bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. ColliePuffs.com gets you 15% off. Collie Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but ColliePuffs.com, ColliePuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Collie Puffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. I don't think it's the final segment of the week. I think I'll be live Wednesday morning. We'll play it by ear. But I do want to talk about the reason I'm in Vegas and what has quickly become a huge talking point on social media. That is the Players Era Championship and the impact that it is having on the world of college basketball. Okay, so everybody knows college basketball. Excuse me. Everybody knows college basketball. The week of Thanksgiving, they call it Feast Week, okay? And it's not just because you're eating turkey and stuffing and all that. It's because traditionally there have been these unbelievable college basketball events, and I believe in many ways Thanksgiving week is kind of the kickoff to college basketball season. The season opens in November. I was out here for Arizona and Florida, BYU, and Villanova, but really Thanksgiving is when everybody's locked in and like, oh, crap, a lot of good it's Tuesday, and I got a half day, so I'm going to watch a bunch of dudes in Maui play in a high school gym with 800 people and watch my favorite college basketball coach wear a Hawaiian shirt, okay? So I bring it up because we know the big events of the week. The Maui Invitational is probably the signature one. We, of course, have the Battle for Atlantis, et cetera, et cetera. And if there's one thing I think everybody's noticed, and if you're watching this, you already know, Maui field, a little bit light this year. Only one ranked team, NC State. Remember last year in Maui, arguably the best field ever. Auburn wins, ends up in the Final Four. Iowa State was there. North Carolina was there. Michigan State was there. UConn, if you forgot, went 0-3 there. And they called it like the last great Maui field. And the reason that the Maui field has Arizona State and Seton Hall and whoever, who both won, by the way, is because there's a new event in Vegas the last year or two called the Players Era Tournament, Players Era event, whatever. And so, long story short, I'm not going to beat around the bush. There are two things that are very important to note about the Players Era. The first is that they very publicly and transparently pay teams to be here, okay? So every team that is participating, there are 18 teams this year, I think, maybe 16, I don't know. I think it's 18. Every single team that's here gets paid $1 million to be here, and it's in NIL money. There are NIL. I actually found this out. There are NIL requirements for the tournament to be compliant. Now they're pretty light requirements, but they're requirements nonetheless. So every team gets paid $1 million that goes to their NIL, and so coaches have been very vocal about it. Like Kelvin Sampson basically said, like, look, they want to pay us $1 million, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, we'll play in a parking lot. We'll play in a ballroom. We'll play wherever. Just write us that check. Bill Self was a little bit more, danced around it, but basically said, like, look, the sport is evolving, and, the Maui Invitational type tournaments have to change how they're doing things. And so why the players era now is so big. So here are some of the teams that are here. So just yesterday, I was at St. John's, Iowa State, top 25 matchup. Alabama, Gonzaga, top 25 matchup. Auburn's here, Michigan's here, Baylor's here, Creighton's here. I said Alabama. There's really good teams. And then next year, Florida, Louisville, et cetera, is supposed to be here. So everybody comes, everybody gets $1 million just for showing up. Now counter that with, say, the Maui Invitational, where you not only don't get paid, but you actively have to pay a lot of money to get to Maui. Like, I don't know the last time y'all been to Maui. It ain't easy to get to, especially from North Carolina, from New Jersey, where Seton Hall is. And so it's kind of become this talking point in college basketball. The players era is paying you to go. Maui's asking you to pay. So is Maui about to die? Are all the good teams going to come to the players era tournament? Is this thing about to kill Feast Week? And it's become a big talking point, and it is worth noting, by the way. There are plans to go to 32 teams. Matter of fact, Matt, you can pop up that Jeff Goodman tweet. I saw Goodman. I got to ask him about this. He says next year, Players Era is going to have 32 teams. Okay, cool. Get that. Broken into 3 weeks in Vegas. Ian Orifice tells Field of 68. 16 teams the first week, broken into 2 8-team events. 16 teams the second week, broken into 2 8-team events. Third week, the winners of the first 2 weeks advance. Oh, buddy. All right. So let's break it down. So first of all, what do they say? Pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. 32 teams is one thing. Spanning it over 3 weeks feels a little aggressive, okay? So let's put aside my personal opinions on the Maui part of it, but let's just talk about 32 teams. You want to bring 32 teams, that's fine. You want to play in multiple gyms, that's fine. It was pretty cool all day from 10 a.m. till literally about midnight Pacific. There were basketball games on yesterday in Vegas in either MGM Garden Arena or Mandalay Bay, where the Las Vegas Aces play, okay? So it was actually pretty cool. You could bounce back and forth. It's a not quite a walk, but it's a short cab ride, whatever. But I bring it up because you want to do 32 teams, that's fine. I will say 3 weeks in Vegas is a long time. And first of all, I'm a little confused about that. So teams are going to come for a week and then leave and then come back. That feels weird. Then there's going to be other teams that stay for 2 weeks. That feels weird as well. So to me, I think the best bet, if you want to make this work, and that this is under the assumption that it does work. We're going to talk about the other stuff in a minute. If you want to make it work, I think you just bring 32 teams, have 2 16-team brackets. I think it's that simple. Or 4 18 brackets, excuse me. And you play 3 games and you get out of here. Now, here's my question. Does it work long term? I'm still not sold, okay? So first of all, let me do this because it feels as though there are a lot of media members that have felt the need to trash Maui in the process of elevating the players era. And listen, if you just want to say it's about the money, that's fine. Everybody behind the scenes in basketball that I talked to, not media, not tournament organizers, but I'm talking the coaches that I talked to yesterday, the administrators, etc. Everyone is in universal agreement of this. We're here. We need the money, but we hope Maui survives. Okay. And so we have to stop with this notion of tearing down Maui because I saw all this crap about Maui. That's just not true. Okay. So what are the drawbacks to Maui? One, like I said, you got to pay to go out there. It's very expensive. 2, the travel is a real thing. You're traveling from Seton Hall, traveling to Maui and back. That's like a full day travel each way. I live in LA and I'm here to tell you, getting from LA to Maui is not easy. Okay. So the travel isn't easy. You don't get paid. But there are some other things that are not true, right? So one of the big arguments is, well, nobody wants to go to a MTE, which is a multi-team tournament, multi-team event. Nobody wants to go to an MTE where you play 3 games in 3 days. Well, guess what? I'm here at the Players Era, and every team is basically playing 3 teams in 3 days, okay? Remember, Dan Hurley made that famous rant last year after Maui saying, we're never going back. We're never playing 3 games in 3 days. It doesn't help us. And so that part is interesting to me. The number one argument against Maui, besides the money, is that teams don't want to play 3 games in 3 days, except they're doing it here. By the way, this is another thing about this event that has to get fixed. The schedule is bonkers, where how about this? Your first 2 opponents are predetermined. So like I saw a buddy that, I saw somebody that works for Houston yesterday, and I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, we knew coming in that we were going to play, who'd they play yesterday? Syracuse, and we play Tennessee today. That's probably the signature game of the day today. But the counter to that is the third day, you could play anybody in the field, okay? And so one, I just don't like that, because you have teams now that they could be playing at 10 a.m. Wednesday, they could be playing at 10 p.m. Wednesday, and they have no idea who they're playing. So I saw somebody from Houston, and he literally was like, I got to scout 13 teams because we could play any of them on Wednesday. And so that part doesn't make sense. The fact that you have no idea when you're playing, and then here's the crazy part. The teams that go 0-2, some of them are going to have to play Thursday. So imagine you bring out a charter full of fans and you're leaving Wednesday night, or you're leaving Thursday morning, and the tournament organizers are like, oh, yeah, you got to play Thursday at 1 p.m. It's like a lot of people are going to be pissed off. And so I just bring it up, putting aside the 32 teams over 3 weeks, which sounds crazy to me. I do think there's the bigger picture issue of, it's really not like the setup itself. Now, you can argue getting paid is great. We all need money. It makes the world go round. But you can absolutely positively argue that all of the drawbacks of Maui are the same here. 3 games in 3 days. The big knock on Maui is you don't know who your opponent's going to be until sometimes late. They're not going to find out who they're playing on Wednesday until late tonight. So all of these things are a factor. The other thing I just will say, bottom line, and I don't know if I'll get in trouble saying it, if you never see me on a podcast again, someone at the Players Era jumped me in in the turnstiles or in the bowels of T-Mobile, not T-Mobile Arena, whatever the arena is called. If I don't make it out, that's probably why. But I just bring it up because the money stuff. This is what I was going to say. I lost my train of thought here. The money stuff does not make sense to me. Okay, because this is, again, everyone gets $1 million to be here. That's great. You're bringing in 32 teams. You're going to have to raise $32 million just to break even. Forget turning a profit. You're going to have to earn $32 million. And I understand how sponsorships work. I understand that MGM is plastered all over everything that they're doing. I understand that there's ticket sales, but if you watch the game, the ticket sales aren't that great. So I find it hard to believe that they're going to continually be able to basically create $32 million in revenue year over year over year. And essentially, eventually at some point, I think it's going to be hard to maintain this long term. And so I have my doubts, and I will tell you this. Everybody's trying to sell that this event is so much better than Maui. I'm here to tell you it's not. Again, I'm going to be at the Players Era later. I might get jumped in the bowels of MGM Garden Arena, but it's the truth. Everybody's here because of money. Now, it's a great event once you're here. Vegas is awesome. Vegas is always a good time. Circuit Casino in Vegas is the best place to hang out, but Vegas is great. But a lot of the stuff that they're trying to convince you are the X factors, are the things that matter in this event. They simply don't. And so we'll see what happens. I'm not sold. I will say this. I know the 2026 Maui Invitational. I know 2 teams off the top of my head. I believe Arizona is publicly committed to go there. There's another school that I probably would get in trouble for sharing, but a pretty big-time program that I know is going to be there. So next year's Maui Field isn't going to be terrible. I just don't I don't believe that you can create $32 million in revenue year over year. Now, I think there's 2 separate conversations to have. If I'm Bill Self, if I'm Mark Few, if I'm Kelvin Sampson, if I'm Rick Pitino, if I'm TJ Otzelberger, if I'm whoever, as long as that check clears, I don't really care. I don't care how you find the money. I don't care what you got to do. I don't care. But as a consumer, I'm doubtful that they can do it year over year. By the way, as a consumer product, I thought the crowds were okay. They weren't great. I saw Maui actually was a little bit quieter than usual, so we'll see what happens. I'm not ready yet to pour dirt on the grave of Maui. I want to see where this tournament is 2 years from now. And then also, one last thing, by the way. One last thing. And Matt, you can clip this off too. This is important. There is a very easy way to save Maui. ESPN, I don't know if there's any brand whose approval rating is lower than ESPN's right now. ESPN, you know the easiest way to get your approval rating up? Just give $10 million to the Maui Invitational so they can pay every team that comes $1 million, and then you don't have to worry about competing with Players Era. You pay hundreds of millions for the NBA. You know, I don't even know how many people are watching the NBA these days. Go ahead and pay $10 million to Maui so they can keep this tournament going, because this thing is fading quick. I'm not ready to give up on it yet, but man, oh man, oh man. You know, it's certainly a vibe and it's certainly a conversation. And we got to have it here on the Aaron Torres pod. All right, Matt, we're going to get out of here. Any last questions, comments, thoughts? It could be on any of the topics that we've hit on, but we certainly have talked a lot. Luke says, subscribe, you filthy animals, and buy Collie Puffs. That's Collie Puffs, CAULIPUFFS.com. If you use the promo code Torres, it will get you 15% off any purchase. It's not just first time. So you buy it once, you buy it 10 times, you buy it 30 times. Promo code Torres, Collie Puffs. Anything else before we go? Great show. Lane's become a full-blown wrestling villain. If that's what he wants, that's what he's about to get. The target is on his back like no other. Well, listen, he's already going to be a villain at Ole Miss. Imagine if he loses to Mississippi State, though, and potentially costs him a playoff spot. Yeah, it's bad. All right, I'll tell you what. I'm going to get out of here because there's a few things. My mom's actually in town. I'm going to go have lunch with her before I go to basketball. So shout out to Mom if you're listening on the way over. I'll see you in a few. I'm going to get out of here. If you're not subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music. Make sure you're subscribed. Rate and review the show. Give us quick 5 stars. Debatable if we'll be doing a show Wednesday morning. I'm not opposed to it. I'll be honest, I'm kind of tired of breaking down Lane Kiffin press conference sound. So I'm hoping we have something bigger to talk about. Maybe Arkansas as a head coach. Maybe Kentucky fires it. I don't know. We'll see. Also, probably if we do a show, want to preview Arkansas Duke on Thanksgiving Day. We'll probably talk a little bit about the college football coming up. We're going to get out of here. Appreciate everybody's support. Subscribe. ColliePuffs.com, 15% off, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com, $20 off your first purchase, promo code Torres. And thank you. You can see it in the background. Circa Casino. If you're in Vegas, this is the place to watch games. And if you're on the East Coast, Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. We'll be back probably tomorrow, you filthy animals. If for some reason I don't come back, have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll probably be back Sunday, but let's plan for tomorrow, people.